welcome back, beautiful soul, to another episode of Permission to Follow Your Inner GPS, your inner guided purpose soul path. I am your host, Angel Lady Terry Marie, an intuitive empath coach, crystal goddess, helping her clients to get their BS stories out of the way, connect to angels and spirit, and follow their inner GPS their way. It is my great pleasure and honor to introduce to you yet another beautiful and amazing soul, Ellen Shapiro, and we've been connecting off and on now for probably about a year. She helps creative, heart-centered entrepreneurs become more confident, empowered, and clear the path to prosperity and creating success on their own terms. What an amazing lady this person is. Please welcome with me the beautiful Ellen Shapiro. Hello, gorgeous, and welcome.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
We're happy to have you here. Please tell our viewers about you and how you got started.
I'd be happy to do that. So, listening to your introduction of yourself and then following it with mine, I was thinking we really do have a lot in common because I haven't really said get the BS out of the way, but that's what I do too in my own way.
Sometimes BS can be blind spot and other times it can be the original version.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So tell us about your journey. What is it you do?
Well, I really work with people in terms of looking at their patterns and what is in their way. I work on a lot of different levels because I have like a background from accounting to energy work to meditation. So I'm looking at what's stopping the person on the practical, metaphysical, energetic level. Most of my work is more like coaching and psychological, but it's not therapy. It's looking at what are you trying to accomplish, and again, what have you been doing to move forward on that, and what keeps coming up, what keeps getting in your way.
That's so important to bring in all the levels because so many people, beautiful souls, one and all, think that all they have to keep is doing the steps. But if this part is not in alignment, if it's not cleared out enough to get to the subconscious, that's where we get into trouble, isn't it?
Absolutely. So it's sort of shocking that most of our behavior is driven by the subconscious mind. So I've heard different numbers, 85%, 90%. Wow. So what does that mean? We're just living on automatic? So that's why, and obviously the people who are listening to this and the people we work with are wanting to increase the level of conscious direction that they're having in their lives, not just be run by their programming from the past. But it's hard to do because we're talking about the subconscious. How do you get in there and figure out what's really going on and how do you change it? So.
Yes, exactly. Did you always know that this is what you wanted to do?
I didn't even know what this is when I was growing up. It didn't really exist, so no.
So how did you get from where you were to where you are now, beautiful?
Well, a lifetime journey, of course, but a lot of my journey was backwards, backing away from what I didn't want. And when I look back at that pattern, I think it's because the way I grew up, I was raised to have certain expectations, but they were very broad. They didn't really I didn't have a lot of feedback from my parents or the world about who I really was. I was smart and I was good and I could do well in school, and that was great. Beyond that, I didn't really know. I just knew I was different. I knew I asked questions that nobody else seemed to even think about. I asked my chemistry teacher, how come when you cut a piece of bread, you don't blow up the atoms in the bread?
I remember asking some strange questions, not exactly scientific, but how did tree get its name, and who decided green was green and blue was blue? You know, so,
Right.
so
Right.
what?
Right. So that's like, the creative, innocent soul that, I think when we're younger, we know that not everything, there's more to life than meets the eye. And we're trying to get those answers in different ways. And so I think that was part of it for me. And I was always a psychologist at heart. Like, again, when I was in elementary school, I wanted to do an observation of the younger kids and manipulate variables in their classroom. And the teacher said, sorry, we can't do psychology experiment here.
So in some ways, your path was being shown to you at an early age.
Yeah.
And you've brought a lot of that into what you do now. What has your journey been like? You mentioned not fitting in or not feeling like you were part of the rest of it. How did you start to really work with that and say, okay, so I'm different, got it, now what?
Well, I developed an inner life that, through reading and fantasy and just because I just seemed different than the people around me. I asked different questions. Part of me bought into the values that I was being raised to be like a middle class professional. And part of me just always felt like there's something more here. I was raised in a kind of spiritual vacuum, even though my upbringing is technically Jewish, but God was not talked about. Spirit did not really exist. I mean, I was taught certain moral values,
Mm-hmm.
but so I found that in nature. But then I went through a period of time in my 20s. My mother died when I was 26. It was a very dramatic kind of loss for me, and a lot happened. And by that time, I had found my way to the accounting profession, which was another example of getting as far away from who I really am as I
Mm-hmm.
could get to discover who I really am and what I really value. I don't understand why the pendulum does that for me, but that's been my journey. So I was working as an accountant, trying to deal with this huge grief. And now I look back and I know it was a spiritual vacuum.
Okay.
I just had a prayer. I didn't even know what prayer was. There was just this hurt in me that said, okay, I don't know what is the meaning of my life and what am I here for? And into that vacuum came my stepmother introduced me to a path of yoga and meditation.
Mm.
And so I started on that. And that, again, I didn't understand how any of that worked. It was very unfamiliar to me. It's just my heart knew that something good was going on there. In the beginning, I would just go and listen to the chants and cry and, release a lot of pain. I mean, I dealt with it a little bit in therapy, but and from there, I mean, that started. Then my career as an accountant, I worked an insanely stressful situation. I mean, it really was abusive, but I was trained. This is work, so you have to be, the good soldier or the good girl. Show up, do what you're told, don't make waves. And
Mm.
what I was being asked to do was punishing. It was working like 14-hour days, and it was crazy. And I survived it, but I was so depleted by then. I, and plus I worked 6 months in 3 months' time is basically what happened. So then I had 2 months of paid time from my job.
Well,
So
that part was good.
that part was good, and that saved my life. And it was a huge wake-up call because I went to Kripalu Center in the Berkshires to recover, to get some healing. And when I first went there, I was in my late 20s and I was so depleted, I couldn't get up a flight of stairs.
Wow.
I was basically a healthy person, but I was just completely exhausted and stressed out. So it took me a week to just unwind to the point where I could see that the friendly people at the welcome desk weren't like, I was so paranoid from being under so much stress and working in New York and working in, an office that like, wow, I'm in a good place. These are kind people. Oh my God. Wow, I have really been through some extreme thing here.
How did you know, excuse me for interrupting you, but you were in that accounting position and that doing that work. How did you know or get guided to this retreat place in the Berkshires? Because that's huge. You're talking about left field and or left brain and right brain just pretty much don't go together. So how did you get from the accounting part to that Berkshires?
Well, actually, again, I have to thank my stepmother. She's not in my life now, but she was the one that brought me into this path of meditation and city yoga meditation, which I was involved with a bit. And then when I went through all that stress at work, she and my dad had gone to Kripalu before, and they
Okay.
loved it. They were into it, and said, "I think you need to go there." And I signed up for a workshop, which I could barely do, but I think it was something like Quest for the Limitless You. It was something about looking at your life purpose. And it's like, I wasn't so numb, I could barely do the exercises. But the whole experience showed me I can't, whatever I've been doing, I can't keep doing that. I'm going to be, I'm going to be sick or seriously aged if I keep going with this. This is not worth it.
So what did you do to start turning that around for you? What did you start changing in your life?
Well, one of the things that happened when I was there was I had a session of what was called energy balancing. And I just wanted a massage. They didn't have any available. I said, whatever, I'll lie down on a table. Just give me something. Take some stress away, please. And I had this very powerful experience of this wave of energy and fear moved through my body and left. I just had never experienced anything like that. And I sat up from the session and I said, "What was that?" And the woman said, "That's polarity therapy." I said, "Okay, I have to study that." So I did. I started studying polarity therapy in New York. I had a wonderful training, and it's a very comprehensive system. It includes body work, counseling, energy work, nutritional cleansing, some movement. So it was a really good foundation for me to begin to learn about my body and self-care. And I also started doing more yoga.
Okay, good. When did you transition out of accounting totally to doing what you're doing now?
Well, it's 19 years ago now, actually. So that whole journey from the breakdown to that was about 15 years.
Okay.
But I was still working as an accountant. Uh, I quit full time, went to part time, got into a bunch of debt. I just wasn't ready to really change. Tried to have a practice as a polarity therapist. At that time, people still don't really know what it is, but at
Mm-hmm.
least they know. People know what energy work is. They know what Reiki is. It would be easier now. Not that it's that easy to build a practice like that, but anyway, I went back and forth, but I was still in the accounting model as my main way of earning my living. And I had studied, so then I kept studying things. I learned Gestalt therapy. I learned, I mean, a bunch of different things during that time. And resonance repatterning, which has been a really powerful tool. And it's one of the main things I do in my work with other people. I had learned that. And finally, I had a vision of myself. I went to some kind of networking group, and maybe it was before or after the group, I don't remember, but I had a vision of myself. I was in my 40s at that point, getting like I could see the future. If I didn't make the change, I had this vision of myself as being very dried up and like
Right.
old before my time. Maybe I would get cancer or some kind of illness. My life force was going to leave me. It was like this shamanic vision. And it's like, okay, I have to do this. This is time. I've spent all these years gathering these tools and I've got to take the leap. So I did.
What has been, you mentioned that you stopped, you quit full-time, went part-time and back and forth. What were some of the challenges in creating or building your own business and becoming successful at what you do now know is what you're supposed to do, even if it evolves from here? But how did you get it to where it's like, okay, I'm doing this? Then what was the next step? How did you get past the OMG moments? Now what?
Right. Well, lots of different things happened for me. One thing I realized pretty soon into it was, even though I had an MBA, I knew about business, I was an accountant, I knew that part of it. I had had no real practical training in how to build this kind of business.
Right.
And actually, my training wasn't even entrepreneurial. The MBA was very much about the corporate environment. So the day-to-day thing of having your own business and being self-responsible and the marketing part, I didn't even know how to talk about my work. And
Mm.
unfortunately, like many people that study, maybe it's a little better now, but a lot of people learn modalities and they don't teach you anything about how to talk about it, how to promote it, how to find clients. So you come out and you're all idealistic because you're in love with your modality. Like this stuff is amazing. I can change people's lives. That is so exciting. Okay, how do people, they've never even heard of this modality. And and most of the things that I study, people have never heard of. I'm just drawn to things that I think are amazing and powerful. And I don't usually stop and say, well, is this marketable? Like maybe I should study something everybody's heard of. It's like, no, I want to study what works, what really creates change
Mm-hmm.
in people. I feel like, finally the world is starting to catch up. But
Well, had I had the forethought or the whatever it's called to even ask the question, would I be able to market what it is I'm supposed to do? I probably would have gone, no, I don't know how to do that. There's nobody can teach me that. They're talking about articles and templates, and it's like, okay, I channel. So how is that supposed to fit into this and la la la? And so most of us on the woo-woo side or the spiritual side, whatever anyone wants to call it, we get to work within the mainstream framework. And that's not so easy. That's the vehicle. So how do you, how did you teach yourself to make what you do understandable for someone on the other side going, what? What is it you do?
right.
What is it called?
Yeah.
How do they get, how did you get past that part?
Well, it's definitely a learning curve and trial and error and finding out. Also, the more experience I had with the work itself, the more I could see what it actually did for people. But the biggest learning that I got, and I guess my business background did help me with that. I mean, I had studied marketing a little bit, was you have to speak to people, and maybe because I'm a counselor, and a lot of what I do is about translating things to make them relevant for people. Is how do you talk about what you're doing in a way that that person can relate to. So that's kind of one of my gifts, and that's where the accounting left brain and the more mystical intuitive side, it's like putting, the left brain can do better analytical descriptions of things and put words on things. The other side is just in the energy, which is really hard to articulate.
It is. I totally get that. Totally get that. What's a favorite way? What's one of your favorite ways to work with your clients, Ellen?
Well, my favorite way of working with them has mostly been like people that have an issue they want to work on, who understand it's going to take some working the layers through. I've done lots of miracle sessions. One session changes their life. And of course, who doesn't love to create a miracle for somebody else? And I don't want to say I'm doing it. I'm always working with all kinds of help from the unseen realm and from the person, the client's soul, I feel, is directing the process too. But I love, the miracle session, but I always think if you really want to change your life, it's going to take, anything we want to do takes some repeated focus over time. That's just how it works. We can't grow a garden by thinking beautiful flowers. We have to prepare the soil and put the seed in and water and be patient and, all of that. So where am I going and what was your question?
What is one of your favorite ways to work with your clients?
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So working over time, and really when the client, and most of my clients are just, okay, here's what I want to work on. Whatever tools you think you need, let's use them. So I can work with people. I do some work which I call ancestral alchemy, and it's working with ancestral pieces, which that was one of the missing pieces for me in my own journey around money and prosperity. And I didn't know it. It's the thing about patterns like that is it's not, you're not thinking about your childhood or what you heard about money growing up. Like imprints that are affecting you that you're not even thinking about. Maybe your grandparents or your parents lived through the Great Depression, or they were immigrants, or somebody lost all their money in a bad deal, or, there's a million stories. So that's one thing I might work with people. Sometimes we look at vows that people have made.
Right.
Again, this is all in the unconscious. And you might say, how would I even know if I have a vow going on? There are some signs that could indicate that, but I use kinesiology or muscle checking to determine what's underneath the pattern.
Nice. Along my own journey, I have, as I've lifted the layers through forgiveness and release and let go, other things come up, and it's like, wow, I didn't even know that was still there. I didn't even know it was there. I thought, wow. And that's, yes, a life can change in a single session. And yet, if people really want to get more of it, if not all of it, then it takes some time, because the layers have been building and being compressed over time.
Right.
Now, the good news, and I think you might agree, at least I hope so, that it doesn't take as long to undo as it did to get there, right?
Oh, well, thank God.
Yeah, thank God. Otherwise, I was like, yeah, I'm not doing this. It's going to take too long.
No, I wouldn't be trying to make my living doing this.
No.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it, is when you have the right, system. And something like kinesiology is beautiful because it accesses the subconscious mind directly. So I could ask you, okay, what do you think is the core belief underlying your money issues? And, some classic example would be, I feel like I'm not good enough, or I don't deserve it, or men should have the money, not women, or, something like that. And like, okay, that's there. but what else is going on the subconscious level that you might have, is just, you wouldn't know. So with the muscle checking and with the processes I do, like resonance repatterning, goes through lists and lists of possible things that could be going on. Or sometimes I'll just muscle check, okay, this goes back to age 8, and I just test, okay, what's the age, and I get 8. And the person first will usually say, well, I don't know. Okay, we moved, my dad lost his job, my mom was freaking out about having her 4th kid, or okay. So, and then we look at, how did that impact you? What was that like for you? What was the belief that came out of that? So we get a lot more specific about these different pieces.
And that's what's so important, because there's so much that is in the subconscious mind that's been covered up by who knows what else.
Right.
And it takes, yes, there are a lot of posts on social media, well, you can be your own guru. Absolutely. But if you're in the middle of it, it's harder to see. It's like it's harder to give yourself an energy healing because you can't totally let go, because you're doing it. You have to be conscious enough and hear enough to keep on doing it, so you're getting benefit, but not the whole thing.
Right. And I can do sessions on myself, but it's harder to be the client because, and the therapist, you have to go back and forth. I'm pretty experienced by now with doing that, but especially in the beginning, it's hard for most people. And that's where I often, especially lately, the people that are coming into my practice, they're not beginners. They've been doing work on themselves, but they're saying, I didn't get this from this self-help book. I didn't get this from this course. I said, because you didn't get that kind of individualized lasering in on things. It's not to say that your work wasn't valuable, but like in resonance repatterning, we're looking at what is the person actually subconsciously resonating with. And that's not the same as the conscious. So, you say you're working on your confidence or your self-esteem, and you've said 80,000 affirmations about yourself. I am lovable. I am good. I am worthy of success. All of these things. I'm sure that some change has been made. But if you grew up hearing things like, well, your brother's smarter than you, or you're never good enough, or, you're not important because we've got 5 other kids, or whatever it is, that's in your subconscious mind, and that completely contradicts all of those affirmations.
Yes. Because it's what we need to do is get to the root of it. And it's really hard to get to by yourself.
Exactly. And
because you're in the way.
When your subconscious mind and your conscious mind are in conflict, or you don't even know they're in conflict,
right?
You're driving with the brakes on, and the subconscious always wins.
Yep. So it always wins.
Yeah. So when you get them lined up, it's like, wow.
Exactly. And you can discover things that you're like, I didn't even know that was there. I know this isn't mine, so where's it coming from? Which leads us to the collective, and that's a whole nother topic for another time.
Right. That would be fun to talk to you about that. Yeah.
That would be. So perhaps you'll come back and we'll work on the collective issues, and because there's lots of stuff I knew wasn't mine, and yet I had bought into the collective belief about XYZ and needed to, and did, thankfully, get that healed, but I had to get the other stuff out of the way. But before I go down that tunnel, before I go too far, thank you so much for being here and sharing your journey and how you were definitely on your spiritual, mystical side, and then you went the total opposite to accounting and back and forth.
Yeah.
Please share with our viewers how they can find you.
Okay. Well, my website is ellenannshapiro.com, and it's ELLENANNE Shapiro, SHAPIRO.com.
And on social media, can they find you anywhere there?
Yeah, I have a page, Solopreneur Woman, on Facebook.
Solo printer?
Solopreneur.
Solopreneur. Okay. I
Very
knew I
hard
didn't
to
hear it
spell.
right.
Very hard to spell.
Solopreneur
Yeah.
on Facebook. All right. So that's ellenandshapiro.com and solopreneur, like entrepreneur, but solopreneur on Facebook.
It's Solopreneur Woman.
Solopreneur woman. Thank you. So I'd gotten a part. Solopreneur woman. Very important.
Yep.
She's an amazing person. And thank you again for being with us. Once you've finished viewing this amazing interview, please pop by angeldreamteam.com and visit our Living Spirit and Wellness Global Directory. There are amazing souls on there, like Ellen. She's a part of our ever-growing global directory. You can find her and some other amazing souls for readings and graphic design and whatnot. And thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you again real soon, beautiful soul. Bye-bye for now.
Thank you, Terry.
You're welcome, Ellen.